I started sorting through my random box of carb and fuel pump parts. I've picked which fuel pump I'm going to rebuild. This is a 12-volt pump. I chose this one because it's got the double points on it, which I believe the later ones had. I think they're supposed to be a bit more reliable. This is all now soaking in penetrant solution, so I can hopefully get these screws all undone, and then I can clean all this up. The coil and everything should all be fine, and then look at ordering replacement diaphragm and points and rebuild this pump. You do need to get new diaphragms for these. Chances are these are all shot anyway because they're going to be ancient, but you need to get new diaphragms that can handle modern fuels with ethanol in them. I try to avoid that fuel if I can, and just go for the normal stuff, but it'll be worth getting the right sort of diaphragm to go in this. Then it'll be good for any fuels in the future. I also started looking at the downdraft carburetor that I want to use on the Austin when I supercharge it, and I've pulled it all apart and given it a good cleanup. I've had it sitting in a tub of petrol for about the last week to help get some of the gunk off it, and it's still got quite a bit of carbon on it, a bit like R2-D2 really. But I've cleaned most of it off and it's come up okay. And if we can balance that, this is still a nice fit in there, sliding fit. You can hear the air, so that should be fine. Cleaned up the fuel float bowl, and when I was cleaning up the body I discovered there's actually some damage on it. So it's been cracked around here. Not sure if we can see it, but you can see that is cracked. It hasn't broken off completely, but it has been cracked in the past. So I sort of just filed just the very top of the end there, and you can see the cracks in the end if you do that. So I'm going to be putting new bushes in this and putting a new throttle shaft in it anyway. So this just needs to be strong enough that I can bore it out to fit the new bushes. And to be able to do that, I went through my junk box of little scraps and odds and ends of metal, brass and aluminium mainly, and found a piece of aluminium and turned it down on the lathe, cut a little slot in it, and I'm going to use that little sleeve over there. That's a nice push fit, and I'm going to fill the outside with epoxy, probably just JB Weld, and that'll just hold all of that together, and then it should be strong enough then for me to, when I have to bore it out to fit the new bushes that come with the rebuild kits, because these always get worn out. So this is the throttle shaft. These are quite hard to get out sometimes, that's why it's a bit mangled, but they tend to cause wear inside here, so the shaft ends up getting sloppy inside the carburetor body, and you get air leaks, and you can never tune them properly if they're leaking. So the rebuild kit comes with a little sleeve. I think I mentioned it in one of my other films, and I can set this up on the lathe. You bolt it to a plate, and that lets you bore these out. And when you bore them out, what you do is you bore through from either side, and you don't go all the way through. You leave a little lip on the inside there to help seal it. So I'm going to order one of those kits, but for now I'm just going to JB weld this little collar on there just to give it a bit more strength, and that should be fine. The next thing I'm going to start doing is working on the headlamps for the Austin. They're actually ready to assemble now, but I want to look at laser cutting some little gaskets to go. Let's have a look. Between the glass and these front rings. So I'm not sure if originally there was some sort of gasket in there. I don't remember ever seeing one. So normally the glass just kind of fits in like that. You can see there's a little notch there for that little clip at the top, and then you've got these little spring clips that sort of hook up under this edge, push down on the glass. So originally, I don't know if there was anything around this lip to seal it, but what I want to try doing is laser cutting some thin foam to make a thin gasket that goes in there, almost like an O-ring. So this is the foam I got to be able to do that. It's quite thin, it's about 3mm thick, it'll compress down to almost nothing, and that's really easy to laser cut, so I may do that next. I realised when I was filming that last little bit that I hadn't removed the throttle stop from the old shaft that goes through the middle of the carburetor. These ones are pinned on, so there's a little steel pin there that goes through the stop and the shaft. So once you rebuild the carburetor, you have to get the alignment of this correct and then drill the hole and repin it. You can also see on this one where the wear is. These shiny spots, it's where it wears through the body of the carburetor, and I can actually feel a lip on there. And you seem to get wear on both sides. You get wear on the brass throttle shaft and in the alloy carburetor body, which is why you need to rebush them. Sometimes apparently you can get away with just putting in a new throttle shaft, but I've never come across one that hasn't been so worn out that these are a little bit sort of rattly in the body. I have epoxied the little sleeve onto the throttle shaft boss there. That should be fine. That should hold it quite nicely when I have to machine that out. I just use JB Weld for that. This is funny stuff. Americans swear by this stuff. I think they can use it to repair anything, which isn't true, but it is really quite good stuff. It's just steel-based epoxy, really, but it's great for little jobs like this. The other place I've used it recently is on these things, which kind of remind me of a little Klingon bird of prey. But these are the clips that hold the trim rings onto the front of the headlamps. So you can see inside here there's this little springy clip, and this is where one of these little clips go. So it's sprung, and that little hook there goes into this little hole on the trim ring, and that's just what holds them in place. They're sort of clipped in place anyway, but that'll stop them falling out. And the original ones of these, they're kind of chrome plated, but they're just that pot metal type stuff. So they ended up all completely pitted and corroded. So I smeared JB Weld all over them, which is like this one. I haven't sanded this one back, but you can see this one I've sanded back, and it just fills in all the little pits and craters and things. And I'm just going to paint that with some etch prime, and then I'll put some sort of top coat on it. I'm not sure what color. Maybe this silver zinc paint that I used on the inside of the headlight shells after I clean them up, just to stop it rusting, because you don't see any of that, which is why I'm not too worried about getting runs in it. But for little jobs like that, this JB Weld epoxy works reasonably well. These have been drying for a few days. It says it dries in, I'm not sure, cures in 15 hours, but I find it's better to leave it a bit longer. It's made in Texas apparently, so maybe it's hotter there and it dries quicker, but I find usually it's better to leave it a couple of days and then it goes nice and hard and you can sand it back. And I've just been using my little sanding drum on the Dremel, which is why it's covered in dust. But that should work fine. I don't know if you can get new ones of these recreations, reproductions, but I think these, once they're painted up, they're just such a small detail, they'll be fine. I just don't want them to corrode again. I've made up the cables for the headlights. They have sort of bullet connectors on one end to fit into my wiring loom, and I used more modern spade type connectors on the headlight end, just with crimp terminals because they're not seen, so they're all hidden inside here. I usually put the female connectors on the powered end, so if any of these come loose, if you had the male connector on the power end and it comes apart, if you've got power on one of these, it'll flap around inside here and it'll short out. So if you've got the females on the side supplying power, if anything comes undone, it's not going to short. I did use this armoured cable just because it's neat and tidy, and I've got 4 wires coming up into here because what I'm actually going to do is on the car, when I wire in the side lights, I'm actually going to run the wire up through the base of the lamp where I've got these rubber grommets, and I can fit the extra wire through there. These reflectors are new reflectors that I got, and they use these, they're what's called APF bulbs, American Pre-Focus, and I'm not sure you can see, but there's 2 filaments in there. There's a sort of flat one and a curved one. They're both the same wattage, they're both 35 watt, 12 volt, but you need to get them the right way up, I believe, so that one acts as the high beam and one acts as the dip, and I'm not sure which one's which, so I need to either find that out or play with these once I've got them set up to figure out which way up they go. So these reflectors, there's no keying or anything on them, so what I've done is I cut my gasket to go under the glass, so there's actually a piece of foam underneath here sealing up this face, and then I laser cut another gasket to go inside here so that there's a gasket here as well. These ones I cut some time ago, and these were hand cut, and it takes several scalpel blades, and you can see it's not as neat as just doing it with the laser, but this one fits inside there, and then this will go in there, and when it's all pushed together tight, it'll squish down, and that'll seal everything. But this can go any orientation in here, so I need to figure out which way up the bulbs are supposed to go to give me the correct lighting patterns with the headlights. And these glasses also have a pattern etched in them, or sort of cast in them, I guess you would say. So that's going to affect the beam pattern as well. So it'll take a little bit of playing just to get these to work right, but I think once these are all clipped together, they should be nice and waterproof, and hopefully they'll work well. And these will just plug straight into my existing loom, as I mentioned. That's I've tried one of these out with one of the headlamps, and they do work. So that's the electrical side of things done. I still need to make the actual mounting brackets, which will be the job for tomorrow.